Hi, I'm Brad, and the meta monarchy is falling. Say that one 5 times fast. Bet you can't. There was a bit of news this week about Pico. If you don't know who that name is, they're basically a Chinese company that was releasing these headsets. Basically, very similar competitors to the Quest 2, but originally it was for a market that the Quest 2 was not allowed to be sold: China. They released a device called the Pico Neo 3 Link, which is basically a Pico Neo 3 Pro that came with a DisplayPort connection to allow compressionless PC VR wired gameplay. They sold it for about $500 in the Europe market. It was more of a beta test and they only allowed 22,000 units to be sold. But the interesting thing about it is at the end of this promotion, they said that if you bought one of these headsets, you get around a 35% discount on an upcoming headset if they released one within 12 months. Now, as always, I was very interested in what this device was and started talking to people, but I didn't really get that much information other than some hints that it might have been a Cambria competitor. Well, we now have a lot more information about the device that's being worked on and almost soon to release. More on that. And I'm just going to give you a huge info dump on what you can expect. I think it's really awesome, even though it's, TikTok. Yeah, it's TikTok. Basically, Pico was last year bought by a company known as ByteDance, which again owns TikTok. So it's very similar to when Facebook bought Oculus years back. In fact, they even use TikTok platform, mostly the ads on the platform in the Chinese market, to market the headset so Chinese users would be more likely to buy it. Again, these are all young users that use TikTok mostly, and it was actually a very, very lucrative process. They actually were able to raise their sales targets because this ad platform with their TikTok was getting more people interested in their headsets than even ByteDance expected originally. So again, even though it is a social media platform, it's more friendly toward younger users, which are more likely to be buying VR devices to begin with. So introduce a XR analyst that I respect greatly. I talked about him recently in a Meta Cambria stream where I basically said this analyst watches a company known as Guartech very closely. Guartech is a mass producer of many VR headsets, including Meta, Sony PlayStation VR, and at one point, Pico. In fact, they're still going to be mass producing Pico headsets, but before ByteDance bought Pico, Guartech was actually the owner of the Pico company. So he usually has some very good leaks, and he got a big info dump of what we can expect from Pico, kind of hinting to what this new future headset is going to be. So I'm going to list off everything that he wrote, and basically we can talk about in the comment sections, as long as you like this video. And subscribe. And go to bradsmells.com/Patreon to give me money. I like money. So let's just get right into the details of what this device is expected to be. If you think it's going to be a Quest 2 competitor, I'm sorry to say, it won't be. I mean, the Neo 3 already exists. That's what it's trying to do. This is going to be a Meta Cambria competitor, which to me is more interesting. I like high-end hardware. So, ByteDance has developed a high-end VR product. The product uses pancake lens technology, which allows a more lightweight and compact appearance than most VR products that are on the market today. Resolution, refresh rate, computing power, storage performance have all improved significantly. Basically, that confirms already, even though we don't know the exact specifications, better displays, and probably better cooling, I would guess, for the XR2, similar to what Cambria seems to be doing for their device, where they have 2 fans to allow better, maybe overclocking, but that's, I'm not sure about that. And faster SSDs, I'm sure, on the actual chip itself. The product will have built-in eye tracking technology with retina recognition, eye capture, and gaze rendering. So all the stuff, again, we've been expecting from a lot of headsets to start coming out. PSVR 2 has eye tracking, Cambria has eye tracking, the Apple headset will have eye tracking, even the Valve Deckard will almost definitely have, no, I'm not even gonna say almost, definitely will have eye tracking when it comes out. Which is why I complained so much in my Vive Pro 2 review last year. I even said this, you can go back to the video where I said any headset that's $800 or more that releases next year or within a year, if it doesn't have eye tracking, it's just gonna be out of date. And we're already seeing that very strongly with all the products coming out in the market. Now, if you're wondering if it has face tracking, he does not actually name face tracking, but he does say that this product will allow virtual human real-time generation. Virtual human also means avatars. And that, I think, is very important for social media platforms in general. I think they put a high value on eye and face tracking so they can have better social interaction. If you own a social platform, of course you want social features. But I want to go one step further. If they did include eye and face tracking in their device similar to Cambria, they can leverage their TikTok platform better than Facebook probably can. I don't know if you've watched many TikTok videos. I have not, but the ones I have seen is mostly people with their real life face just kind of making stupid gestures with their facial expressions and like kind of commentating over very short clips or videos. Well, if you know anything about VTubers, which if you have not heard the word VTuber, I recommend you type that into YouTube now. You'll see a bunch of gaming channels where people have millions and millions upon millions of views, and all it is just this person that has a virtual avatar in the corner reacting to what's going on to the gameplay. That is something I think is going to grow very fast and big in this coming XR age. Since ByteDance, Pico all have the connections with TikTok, I imagine they'll be able to leverage this technology to allow you to export live eye and face tracking data from their avatars and be able to maybe upload clips in the future to actually have that sort of avatar VTuber stuff directly to TikTok, which I think would also benefit the sales and marketing of their Pico devices even more. But of course, eye tracking does not only mean just like social features. It does have gaze tracking, which should allow actual foveated rendering or dynamic foveated rendering, which is different than fixed foveated rendering, which is usually just one spot. It moves with your eyes, which should give at least 2 times performance, I would say, on an average basis. He also says that there will be much more black technology in the device, which is another sort of way of saying very advanced features, hardware features. He didn't say anything about mixed reality cameras or anything, but I have a feeling when we talk about price later on, I would be surprised if they did not have some features that, again, would be similar to Cambria and sort of opening the door for AR through VR pass-through. He also goes on to talk about the VR controllers for this new device that are completely different than the controllers that come with these devices behind me. They sound already very similar to the Cambria controllers and even the Magic Leap 2 controllers, which, well, all do the same thing. What is that thing? Well, it's this. The new controllers will use the inside-out tracking technology compared to the inside-in technology, which is basically how the Ring controllers worked. The new controllers are smaller, and there's no blind spots. Again, if you've seen any Cambria controllers, and I've seen real-life pictures of the Cambria controllers, and again, the Magic Leap 2 controllers, they all have cameras built on the actual controllers themselves with their own little chips doing their own slam tracking. So they do not need the headset to see them. No matter where they are, they can actually decide where they are in the actual space, similar to how headsets have been tracking in previous generations. So again, you get all the benefits of having controllers, very nice, feelings, but no dead zones or lack of FOV. Very big technology that's catching on. I'm sure more than Meta or Pico or Magic Leap, I'm sure a lot of headsets will start coming out with this technology. And obviously, if it's not apparent already, this hardware costs and the R&D expenses of creating it are far higher than the Neo 3 was. So again, just high-end, a lot of R&D, good stuff. Now, despite the naming title of this video, which I only named it for clarity because people are not going to understand what I'm talking about if I didn't name it this product is not going to be the Pico Neo 4. It is, again, a competitor to Cambria, and even internally and externally, they don't have a final name for the device yet. But again, it's definitely not going to be Pico Neo 4. The plans of how they're going to release hardware for the future is actually very similar to Meta. They are creating this new Cambria or super high-end line for all the new features, which will eventually trickle down to the Neo line, which is expected to be the Neo 4, probably coming out next year. I was talking to some people in the supply chain, if you're interested in this, but it takes, at least a year in advance to get supply chains ready or, get the ball rolling for a device that's coming out at least a year later. And I can confirm that Quest 3 is going to come out definitely next year. The ball has started rolling very recently for that. So Quest 3 will release probably next year around Connect, and I imagine that Neo 4, which will be a competitor to Quest 3, will also release around that same time frame. That is my speculation, but it's pretty well educated guess. So yeah, it's not going to be the Pico Neo 4 or Pico Neo 4 Pro. It'll be a new product named Series or whatever. Now, ByteDance has some huge hopes for not just this product, but for the actual industry. They're not just dipping their toes, they're diving in heavily. They're going to have an aggressive subsidy policy for their hardware going forward. We already kind of see that with the Neo series. I mean, $500 for a product that's overall well-rounded, I would say, than the Quest 2 with its like built-in battery in the back of the strap, and like it just overall is a much better feeling headset. It's very well priced, and that's because it's very well subsidized. And this product will also be very well subsidized, according to this analyst. The product is expected, and this is probably before subsidies, to cost around $1,500 US. But in order to speed up the construction of their VR ecosystem, they'll be increasing tons of subsidies for their hardware, including this device, including the existing subsidies for the Neo 3. And ByteDance's overall subsidy to the VR industry hardware will exceed 3 billion yuan in 2022, which if you translate that to US dollars, that's about $150 million that ByteDance plans to lose just from subsidies on the devices they're selling. So again, it just seems like a very similar strategy to what Meta has been doing. And it's for the same reasons. They want to build up these ecosystems because this market's going to be insanely competitive, insanely fast. So if you did get that Pico Neo 3 link in the actual European market, I'm sure that also adds to the subsidies that they are planning to do for this device. So it might be worth it for you, some of you in Europe. But what about the USA? Well, he actually does go in and talk about that, and that's kind of the last thing he does talk about other than the suspected release date, which will be after the spiel. People in the US, when they announced the Pico Neo 3 link, they were like, well, what about us? And I speculated this recently on a stream I went on yesterday with MRTV Sebastian about how I believe that the reason they were not targeting the US right away was mainly due to the way that Meta treats the European audience compared to the USA audience. Let me explain. If you're in Europe, you might not know this, but in USA, we have a lot more marketing done by Meta. Not just the fact that we have Horizon Worlds, which if you're interested in that for some reason, you're still not able to access that platform. But if you go out in stores and billboards, if you go to a brick and mortar store like, Walmart or whatever, you'll see giant sections of Meta Quest with all the stockings and all the accessories right next to where you would see PlayStations and Xboxes. It's a huge marketing effort. But for US users, when I talk to European fans, nothing like that. In fact, European users feel very disconnected from the Meta brand due to that. And ByteDance has noticed this, and they're taking advantage of it by targeting the European market first. They're doing that beta test with only 22,000 units, and even in countries that are not even allowed to sell Oculus Meta headsets like Germany, for example. Germany's not allowed to buy Meta headsets because they have very stringent ad policy platforms, but ByteDance is allowed to sell in those platforms because the TikTok in China is very different than the TikTok in pretty much the rest of the world. So it hasn't really caught on in these Western countries because there's a totally different policy between countries. But ByteDance is very confident in this XR ecosystem and growing it, and he even goes on to say that probably the huge expansion to Europe will not just be Europe. It'll probably expand to USA as well. It's just sort of targeting Europe first because, again, Meta has mostly silently not abandoned it, but it's just not as much of a focus to USA. Whereas if Meta would have a release in USA, they're still building up their team, which they are hiring a pretty large marketing team for USA, so it is going to happen. But for now, it's just a very big struggle to actually push into that USA market right away. But they will. ByteDance TikTok can leverage TikTok and all their stuff related to that, and the hardware subsidies will eventually carry over to USA with their product launches. Speaking of launches, this is where I think the big bombshell comes in. Pico plans to release this device even before Meta Cambria, which is expected to release during Oculus or Meta Connect, which is going to be around probably the September time range. So Pico really wants to get people excited about their device before all the noise is ruined by the Meta Connect chaos, I would say. In fact, if they succeed in this, even though if you don't watch channels like mine, it'll feel like that Meta, when they release their device, will be copying a lot of the stuff that Pico releases. And they're going to be, again, subsidizing the hardware super hard, pushing into more worldwide markets than just China is a very big push, and it's expected to happen very soon. So that 1 to 12 months for that discount is way sooner than 1 to 12 months. Really, all I'm trying to say is in this video is even if you don't like the probably likely ad policy or really the data collection policy that TikTok does on its users and will probably do with this headset, even though it's not doing it yet, but I mean, ByteDance has just bought Pico not so long ago. I've heard they're working on a OS redesign, which I'm sure is going to introduce a lot of those TikTok ByteDance elements eventually. I'm not sure if that's totally true. I only heard about a OS redesign, but haven't been able to corroborate that claim. But yeah, it just seems like Meta is lacking or just gonna fall a lot more in competition than we previously thought. I always felt that way. In fact, the more I research all these hardware being worked on by companies, the more I realize you shouldn't be so worried. Like Meta's days of being the only like low end and high end and whatever competitor of the VR market is numbered. We're just talking about Pico here, but we have Sony, Apple, Valve coming out, Samsung, Microsoft. Google. They are all working on XR hardware because it is about to explode right now. We are in the Cambrian age of XR technology where devices are going to become way more useful and exciting for consumers, and it's going to be a great time for all of us, and I hope you will stick with me for the entire ride, because my madness will never end because there'll always be new headsets being worked on. Anyway, that is it. If you're excited about this headset, let me know in the comments. If you think this is a terrible, terrible thing happening because you might not like the Chinese companies going worldwide or whatever, let me know in the comments as well. I know this might be a very, it'll be a very strong comment section is what I feel. But thanks to all my Patreon people here. If you really want to support this and all the videos and research I do, bradsmells.com/Patreon. If you spend $25 or more, you get listed here. I don't know why you would want to be listed in my videos, but these freaks did, so maybe there's a market for that. Just like there's a market for this super high-end hardware that seems to be coming out from a lot of companies. Thank God it's high-end. Oh, God. All right, bye.